If you compare the same speech that Barack Obama gave almost to the day in 2009, right? I think it was this time it was Trump in February 28th, and I think Barack Obama gave it in February 24th. The amount that Obama had already done in that first month relative to what Donald Trump has been able to achieve is pretty stunning. Now, to be fair, there was a massive emergency in this country. We were in the midst of a financial crisis, and so the level of urgency was much more significant. But Donald Trump's speech was basically crowing about a rise in the stock market, a purported wave of optimism that has come over the country, and I'm not sure. Maybe that's maybe that's happening in some pockets, but I'm not aware of this wave of optimism, and certainly the polling doesn't show that. And then sort of broad, almost the same things that he called for during the campaign, but now far more general, because it seems, as he said earlier in the week, maybe I guess it was the end of last week, that who knew that these things could be so complicated?
Well, he said nobody knew that they could be so complicated, which, kind of, yeah, sorry, actually everybody knew it was going to be complicated. Well, this is, he seems to think, and this is, again, Trump is not actually, he's not really a politician, and he's not really a manager or an executive. In fact, there was an article written in Politico last week that I found so fascinating about his managerial style, which, people are talking about how chaotic the White House operation is. And he's always operated in this chaotic style, but he's only run a small mom-and-pop business before, right. And so the ramifications of it were, slightly less severe. But in any case, he was described as a performance artist pretending to be a manager in this article, and I think that that's kind of true. So he has these photo ops where he holds up the executive orders, and everybody, and the press rushes to show it, and he doesn't really say much, or what he does say is kind of inane. And so he's giving this impression, I think, to his voters and perhaps to some members of the press that he's accomplishing something. Right. And he's also giving the impression that he's doing it in the environment that Barack Obama faced in 2009. I've been so struck by this, as if, Trump is actually portraying the country today as being what it was in many senses in 2009 when Barack Obama took office. We were in the midst of an epic economic crisis. We didn't know if the banks were going to fail. I mean, the whole global financial system was in peril, but the auto industry was on the verge of collapse. I mean, it was serious stuff.
I had friends who worked in the banking industry who had apparently told their spouses, pull as much money as you can out of the ATM. I mean, these are people who are well placed at some of the. There was a real sense of impending just implosion at that time.
Absolutely, and that's what Obama was facing when he came in. I mean, he was facing an absolute, potential catastrophic meltdown, and it came very, very close. And in fact, we're still in the midst of recovering from all that. Look at what happened in Europe. I mean, this was a serious crisis, and that's the world that Trump describes. People being desperately afraid, and I think that at that point, the public itself was kind of paralyzed, right? I mean, for the most part, the Republicans hated that a Democrat had won the election, but beyond that, when you see people in that situation in a real crisis, there's this sort of sense of paralysis. Oh my God, what's going on? So when Obama came in, he was faced with all this, and he, 1, 2, 3, 4, just kind of started developing policy after policy very quickly, efficiently, and with the use of experts to try and fix a very, very real problem.
And we should note that I think you and I took some issue with some of the contours of those policies, but they were actual policies that addressed things that we could analyze and say it didn't go far enough here. It went to money was given to the wrong people, whatnot. But it was but there was a competency. I think maybe I had some ideological issues with it, but there was a competency involved in actually formulating a response.
Absolutely. I mean, we were really in the midst of a crisis, and of course there were arguments about how to deal with that crisis, and many of us had issues with the way the Democratic Party approached it, the way Obama did, what the priorities were. But there was a seriousness of purpose there in a very real crisis. And now this crisis, I mean, yes, we are, I don't know, do we have a sense of malaise in certain areas in the country? Has there been a long-term, decline in certain standards of living, income inequality? There's a lot of stuff, none of which Trump is actually going to address. This is a phantom, policies to address a series of sort of this dystopia that he's creating rhetorically that isn't actually an accurate reflection of the way America is. So it's a very, very strange thing to watch him get up there and talk about his accomplishments when really what we're seeing is the building of, in my view, an authoritarian state, a deregulated look at the people in his cabinet. I mean, he stacked the cabinet with billionaires, generals, and, basically the entire staff of Goldman Sachs. Right. So I think we can see, what's really happening is that. And the idea that these photo ops represent anything more than him doing his normal salesman shtick, it's what Karl Rove said. Politics is TV with the sound turned off. I think Trump has taken that literally and is running with it.
Well, it's interesting, and we've got to take a break here in a minute. But it seems that they are settling into some type of the idea is going to be to delegate as much as possible, so that and not just in terms of actually performing tasks, but authority over tasks. So this week we heard the report that the generals, which is a very weird way of referring to them, particularly in a civilian-controlled country. I don't know. It's just that seems, sort of.
General.
It seems
his general.
Banana Republic. Yes, his generals are going to have the authority to launch attacks and other things, I guess, against ISIS, and who knows how broad that authority is, which gives him the ready-made ability to distance himself from failure. He is already this week saying that the leaks in his administration, a function of bad management, particularly this early in an administration, are a function of Barack Obama, if you can believe it. Presumably Obama left like some type of intercom, baby monitor maybe in the White House that has been listening to it secretly, parked in a unmarked vehicle outside of 1600 Pennsylvania. But there seems to be an increasing pattern of trying to distance Trump from the implications of his decisions, or basically take the decisions out of his hands. I think that's a trend we're going to see more of.